No breakthrough after 3 hours of talks. No clear answers after 3 years of war.
We haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. There's no deal until there's a deal.
Smiles, handshakes, flattery, but no deal. Is it real diplomacy or pure theatre?
President Putin, will you stop killing civilians?
The ball is now in Ukraine's court.
So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting. It's ultimately up to them. They're going to have to agree with.
While the stakes are high for Europe, India and the world. The Trump-Putin bilateral is the top focus on India today.
Very good evening and thank you for tuning into this edition of the news. I'm Suesha Samant and yes, our all-out focus on the big Trump-Putin meeting that had no conclusive outcome. But the onus now on Zelensky after the meeting that has been slated on Monday to happen between Trump and Zelensky. An unusually warm welcome that we witnessed in Alaska for a man behind Europe's bloodiest war in decades. Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin's 3-hour summit that ended with smiles, handshakes and even praise. But no peace deal that has been sealed yet, just the promise of another round, this time with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky in Washington. Is this the beginning of real negotiations or just a grand performance for Trump's Nobel dream? Watch this report.
An unusually warm welcome in an icy Alaska for a US adversary behind Europe's biggest war since 1945. Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin's much-awaited bilateral. Episode 2 of Trump's peace talks looked very different. Putin arrived to smiles, handshakes and red carpets. And even an choreographed flypast. A US B-2 bomber flew overhead. Not war games, but a show of might nonetheless. A 3-hour meeting followed while the world waited with bated breath. The result? Trump called the meeting a 10-on-10, a productive dialogue with many points agreed.
We had an extremely productive meeting and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. Some are not that significant. One is probably the most significant, but we have a very good chance of getting there.
But the most important point, still unresolved. No peace deal, no end to the war.
There's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO in a little while. I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate.
President Putin, will you stop killing civilians?
President Putin, while deflecting questions on targeting civilians in Ukraine, sang praises for Trump, calling him kind, trustworthy, and said that the war would have never started if Trump were president in 22. Today we hear President Trump saying that if he were president, there would be no war. I think that would have been the case. I confirm that because President Trump and I have established a strong, practical and trusting relationship. And I have every reason to believe that by moving down this path, we can end the conflict in Ukraine, and the sooner the better.
Thank you.
He insisted that he sincerely wants to end the war, warning Kyiv not to sabotage talks and hope that an agreement could pave the way to peace. I have always considered the Ukrainian nation and have said it multiple times that brave nation, however strange it may sound in these conditions, we have the same roots and everything that's happening is a tragedy for us and a terrible wound. Therefore, the country is sincerely interested in putting an end to it. I would like to hope that the agreement that we have reached together will help us bring closure to that goal and pave the path towards peace in Ukraine. Trump, in turn, passed the ball to Zelensky.
I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting. It's ultimately up to them.
Trump followed up on his promise within hours, briefing Zelensky and other leaders of the EU. And soon came the big announcement from the Ukrainian president that he will travel to Washington on Monday to discuss the prospect of a peace deal with President Trump. A meeting the world hopes will be a lot more cordial than the last time the two came face to face in the White House in March earlier this year.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the
the
cards right now. With us, you start having
not
cards.
playing cards.
Right now, you don't.
I'm very
You're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're gambling
I'm
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think
You're gambling with World War III.
So will these talks finally lead into a real path to ending Europe's longest war in decades? Or is all of this simply theatre, bringing Russia back on the geopolitical stage and Trump closer to his Nobel dream? The world awaits. Bureau Report, India Today.
And well, to discuss what happened in that meeting last night, how India is watching this meeting very, very closely, and of course welcoming these round of negotiations, and of course the meeting that is slated to happen on Monday, where Trump has literally put the onus on Zelensky. I have with me our panelists joining us this evening. I'd like to welcome Ambassador J.K. Tripathi, who's a former diplomat, also Burzeen Wagmar, affiliate SOAS, South Asia Institute, University of London. And also with me on the broadcast is Naranjan Marjani, foreign affairs expert. Ambassador J.K. Tripathi, if I could come to you first to get your views in conclusive end to a very showy summit that we witness progress but no deal. A complicated dialogue, we certainly understand as far as Trump's role in these negotiations is concerned. But do you think Trump took the right approach?
Well, Sweta, yes, the approach taken by Trump was right. However, nobody expected to have a big result, have a more important result outcome from this meeting, because this was not a meeting, according to me, it was not a meeting to solve the problem about Russia-Ukraine war. It was basically a meeting to have confidence building measures between Russia and US. And that was okay. All the optics, all the handshake, smiles, all those things, they showed that things are in the right direction, and probably that was the only takeaway of this meeting. Because though Trump said that there had been some issues which are still remain unresolved and all that, but he didn't, neither he nor Putin enumerate those issues. That enumerated those issues. That means that there was nothing on the table which they could take away from the meeting. Only thing is this confidence building measures. Secondly, probably now Trump will meet when Trump meets Zelensky on Monday. He will put his card. He will show his card that these are the things, these are the points or conditions which Putin has mentioned, and they have to be followed. So that is the only thing, because as you know, in diplomatic parlance, it's the moment the meeting ended and they said that it was a very good meeting, I knew that it was nothing, because there is a lot of difference between good or very good meeting and a successful meeting, and none of the participants branded it a successful meeting. So I think now the ball is in Zelensky's court as well as EU's court, but both will have to toe the line given by Trump.
So, in fact, I'd
because
like to discuss that in greater detail and also get Burzin's point of view on it. But before that, I'd also like to bring in Naranjan Marjani on the Putin angle. You know, lots is being discussed on who has emerged stronger and who is at the losing end. And Putin for sure, because he has now been legitimized in the Western world by bringing him back to the talking table.
Yes, definitely. I think in this round of talks, of course, we would not expect a solution or anything, any progress on the Russia-Ukraine war. But for Russia, I think we can certainly call it as success, because now Russia is again engaging with the Western world. And once for more than a decade, the Western countries, including the US, they had made Russia a pariah, particularly after annexation of Crimea and after expelling them from G8, which subsequently became G7. So now Putin is again back on the international stage, and particularly engaging equally with United States. And I would also like to discuss about how this benefits Russia and President Putin, because even in his earlier meeting with President Zelensky of Ukraine, Trump had put the onus of ending the war on Zelensky, because that was not a very good meeting, not a very cordial meeting. There were a lot of arguments. Even now, President Trump is maintaining that any peaceful end to the war or any negotiations or any peace deal, that is basically the responsibility of Ukraine. So he has been consistent with his stand, which I think benefits Russia. So overall, at least when we see a meeting between Trump and Putin, I think Russia's side has emerged a bit stronger than US, and for that matter, than Ukraine.
Right. And Burzin, before I come to you, lots is being spoken now about the meeting that is to happen between Zelensky and Donald Trump, and how the ball is now in Zelensky's court. Let's also tell our viewers why that is, because the onus is now on Zelensky to stop the war, and that is exactly what will be discussed at the Oval Office on Monday. The blame shifted to Ukraine's Western alignment for the war, and no signs of US pressure for Ukraine's security. So because of that reason also, this will certainly figure on the talks that will happen between both the sides. Now, Zelensky's options still remain unchanged, as there is no international leverage. Now, we understand that Zelensky has also pitched for a trilateral meeting, saying that the next round of talks, when they happen, he should also be on the same table as Putin. And most importantly, how he may have to agree on land swap to end the war. That is an extremely important point, because Trump had made it look like he would be able to reclaim the lost territory, and that was not going to figure on the first day of negotiations. But will that happen, or will Ukraine have to compromise, is a big question. But before that, Burzin, if I can come to you to also quote what Trump has said. Trump has been stressing that Ukraine has to agree to it. In fact, when a reporter asked him what is his advice to Zelensky, he said, gotta make the deal. Now that the onus is on Zelensky, will he have to compromise? Because Russia has laid its conditions threadbare.
Russia has taken its maximalist position, and that is what Putin has brought to bear and has consistently done so. But I do not believe it is correct. It is downright fallacious to say that it is entirely in Zelensky's court, because we have to remind ourselves over and over again that he is fighting for Ukrainian statehood and erasure of his country from the map of the world. That is what's happened, and it is Russia who is the aggressor. So let's get our basics right on that aspect. And it's not exactly going swimmingly for Mr. Putin, despite his optics of victory of coming in from the cold yesterday, meeting Mr. Trump, and having a semblance of parity on the world stage. He has achieved that bit. Let's not deny that, which he's coveted for so long, having only met the last US president in 2015, and his last visit with Mr. Trump in 2019 in Helsinki. But just as talks were going to go in Croatia, let me mention this to you. British intelligence, MOD intelligence, did inform the Oval Office. And Mr. Trump arrived in Anchorage with this fact, that Putin has not entirely taken over all 4 regions, the provinces in question that he covets. He partly controls all 4 of them. And would that he were to pursue it to its fullest, it would entail, and this is the intelligence estimate we have afforded as of the latest stats, it would take 4.4 years for him to do so and 1.9 million casualties. Currently, as of July 2025, Russian casualties are running at 1,072 per day. And they are calling in 9,000 conscripts, forced conscripts, 20-year-olds and 19-year-olds per month. So it's not exactly going well for him. Then you have to add in the economic element. Russian economists, and this is not Western facts here that I'm quoting on this bit, that was the British intelligence. Now I'm quoting Russian finance ministry figures as of July 2025 that talk of a deficit of 45.3 billion pounds that Russia faces. So it's not he has everything, though he may put on a brave face to show that he has achieved something, and it's clearly not gone in his favor. And you see, we are going to have a security architecture in Europe that the so-called coalition of the willing may only be in its paper stages yet. But Prime Minister Starmer has informed, and Defense Secretary Healy has mentioned, that the moment a ceasefire were to come into effect, within weeks or within a week, British troops will be on ground to bolster Ukrainian defenses, because it's not a question of if, but when Putin will relaunch, regroup, and re-attack Ukraine. And that is not pie in the sky thinking, but a fait accompli. He is going to do that. He has his targets set not on Ukrainian territory. I have been mentioning this over and over again. It is not, profoundly speaking, Ukrainian land grabs or geography. He's after the erasure of Ukrainian statehood and the idea, conceptually speaking, of Ukraine existing as a sovereign entity.
I'd like to talk to you more on that, but one answer that I've been waiting to get, and I'd like to bring in Ambassador J.K. Tripathi on that. Fact is that Europe would not want a settlement that is forced by the United States or Trump, and something that is entirely against the interests of Ukraine or all of Europe for that matter. Now, with regards to the meeting that has happened and what is to happen on Monday, how do you think UK and Zelensky are going to approach, the way forward?
Well, Suesha, my question is, do Europe and Zelensky have any other option? How many options they have, and what is the feasibility?
Okay.
Can Zelensky do it without US? Or can even EU or NATO do it without US? Because USA has been the major contributor in NATO's program for war support to Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And USA has time and again told NATO that, look, it is your baby, you will have to take care of it. We are withdrawing because we have to focus on our domestic concerns. So if USA withdraws, what will Europe do? Will Europe have enough funds to keep on supporting Ukraine? You should not forget the statement made by Mark Rutte when he said, either you should be prepared to raise your defense budget by more than 3%, to more than 3%, or you start learning Russian. That was the brutal truth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Make your point.
So I don't think they have many more options on the table to choose from.
Okay. Burzine,
yeah.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you, but I just wanted to get Burzine Magmar's view on that. Lack of options, would you agree? Also the fact that Zelensky is wanting to be a part of these negotiations that happen. Trump himself has said that if Putin and Zelensky get to talk, then they would want me to be a part of that. And a trilateral meeting, you think would happen, wouldn't happen? How do you see this?
A trilateral meeting would be in the offing down the line. I do not discount that. That is a fact. But the ambassador rightly brings out the problems that Europe starkly faces. No question about it, which is why we have a new European security architecture. It's been rhetoric so far, but now we have to tangibly put things into action. Yes, NATO members have started stepping up their defense outlays, and it has happened with the UK and Germany, and Poland, of course, is soaring ahead compared to the others. But then last time I checked, Suesha, Poland was wiped out the face of the earth and the map in 1939 when Hitler and Stalin divided it up. So the Poles know what land carving is about, and destroying one's entity as an idea of Poland. So there is considerable momentum now to get things going, which replaces the sense of European complacency that was hitherto noticed, with Europeans by and large spending on their welfare state and other projects. There has been a perceptible shift. The ground has shifted, and it is shifting as we speak, which is why I mentioned, as the British Prime Minister mentioned, and this is today's headlines, that if a ceasefire is effected within a week, we are not going to wait and watch for Putin to maintain what he says in good faith, because we will come in to bolster Ukraine. Now, this is another thing, Suesha, where Putin stands with his sense of entitlement and maximalist demands. It's not just that he wants the Russian-speaking regions of Donetsk and Luhansk and the Crimea. It's not that he wants no NATO membership. Now, if that were the case, for argument's sake, what else is he talking about? Let's discuss that. He gets to decide, sitting in Moscow, what is the strength of the Ukrainian armed forces. Now, I've never heard of a thing like this anywhere in the modern 21st century world, that you dictate how another country's armed forces, how many soldiers, how many Navy reservists, so on and so forth you have. And he gets to dictate that. And he also gets to dictate that Ukraine will have elections in the future. And we know what interference Russia does with elections in Moldova and elsewhere, and Romania. Of course, Ukraine is going to have elections. Nobody's denying that. It's just that you can't hold them in the middle of a war. I mean, that's common sense. But he gets to decide. What Ukraine decides is simply off cards in terms of army strength, and also its foreign policy and the rest of it. Because obviously we are talking about a man, and Ambassador Tripathi, as a diplomat, will bear out this. This is a man, Suesha, I have to keep repeating, who hasn't gotten beyond December 1991 and the dissolution of the USSR, and seeks its former stature back as a KGB intelligence officer. He hasn't forgotten that humiliation. He cannot reconcile himself to the fact that the USSR splintered into 15 independent republics.
Right.
He's not after the 14 independent republics, but he's after Ukraine, and that's what he's coveting, not to mention the Baltic republics who were under the Soviet boot, not to mention Moldova, on who he has his eyes set on also. And Suesha, the last point is Kazakhstan too, northern Kazakhstan, where Putin has been instigating secessionist elements because, apparently white Russian speakers have historically been there. They were always there across the USSR, Russian speakers, true. And now that should be Russian territory. That is what he has been doing, and destabilizing Kazakhstan in the last 2 years too.
Right.
So where does it end with this man is the question.
Okay, we are watching the situation very closely, and I also want to discuss the impact on India, because New Delhi has certainly encouraged these round of negotiations, Trump and Putin, who met face to face. But while Ukraine was the obvious stakeholder, India is watching every development. High stakes in tariffs, oil and defense. Washington had warned of devastating secondary tariffs. Trump hinted he may not need to impose them, but the risk still looms large. For New Delhi, the outcome of this meet could define its economic and strategic ties with the US. Before we take this question to our panelists, watch this report.
A 3-hour-long meeting in Alaska. The stakes high. The stakeholders, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. The third, Ukraine, watching from the sidelines. But not the only one. India too had eyes locked on Alaska. Not just hoping for peace like the rest of the world, but also for respite from the tyranny of tariffs. India has welcomed the summit, saying the pursuit of peace is highly commendable, asserting that the only way forward is through dialogue and diplomacy. An ongoing trade clash with Washington had New Delhi on edge. Right before the meet, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent warned secondary tariffs on India could rise depending on the outcome. Post-summit, Trump called India Russia's oil client, noting it bought 40% of Moscow's oil. He warned that a secondary tariff would be devastating, but hinted he may not need to impose it. Now Zelensky enters the frame, heading to Washington for talks on a possible peace deal, not just a ceasefire. If talks fail, India risks higher tariffs, strained ties with DC, restricted oil imports and defense deals under pressure. But if talks succeed, tariffs could roll back, oil relief may come, and relations may stabilize. For now, no new tariff threats, no immediate punitive move from Trump. But will that last? India waits. Bureau Report, India Today.
All right, Naranjan Marjani, if I could take this question to you, because United States had hinted at potential secondary tariffs for India for buying oil from Russia, but now they've deferred that immediate action. In fact, Trump said that I don't have to think about it right now. I may think about it in 2 to 3 weeks, not right now. India is obviously uncertain about its trade relations with US.
Yes, definitely the way India-US relations have shaped in the past few months, particularly with the threat of tariff looming, India will be watching closely how these talks progress. India has welcomed talks between Trump and Putin, and India will certainly be expecting a positive outcome from the talks that will be held between Trump and Zelensky. I think as far as Trump deciding whether India should buy oil from Russia or not, I think that also it remains uncertain, because I think it would not be in United States' interest to put tariffs on India, and particularly to India is too important a strategic partner for the United States, and if US has to protect its own strategic interests, particularly Indo-Pacific region, the way India-US relations have strengthened in the past 1 decade, then I think Trump and the US administration needs to think twice before imposing tariffs on India, or even before adding any more punitive measures on India, like differing defense deals and any other deals with India that the United States is having. For India's part, I think the way we have seen developments between Russia, US, and now even Ukraine, I think India's stand is vindicated, because India has been calling for dialogue and diplomacy right from the beginning of this conflict, and India has maintained a very balanced position, and India has maintained cordial ties with all the sides, which is what I think now US may be trying to do, and Trump is trying to do between Russia and Ukraine. So I don't think that US will go to the extreme of imposing any more tariffs on India, and India will certainly be hoping that there is some breakthrough, some outcome, positive outcome, when Trump meets Zelensky on Monday, and that things don't really worsen for India from this point onwards.
All right. Also, I'd want to bring in Ambassador J.K. Tripathi, because fact is that what happened yesterday has created history. I mean, from a red carpet welcome to handshakes to all the pomp and protocol, and that brief ride that happened in the presidential limousine from the tarmac to the room where the meeting took place. The contents of that brief chat only known to the two leaders. But fact is that for the world, Trump did seem to decisively welcome Putin back into the diplomatic fold. What is it that India needs to brace itself for?
Well, you see this. I mean, in this conference, in this summit meeting, in Alaska, Putin stands out as a clear winner. He will always say that I was invited in your territory. I came, I discussed, I had my points. You didn't agree, so that is not problem. That is not my problem. You come to Moscow, we discuss again many things. As regards India, you know, you see the uh, outcome of this meeting has got one thing good for India, that Trump has deferred the imposition of secondary tariff for a few weeks, 2-3 weeks,
Right.
because the meeting has not failed. It is still going on, continuing. So it is work in progress. So till there is a final decision
All right.
on this issue, India stands on the safer ground. But even if Putin imposes secondary tariffs, despite all the protests
Right.
from the economists there in USA, even then, India stands not to lose much, I must say,
All right.
because we have because there is the difference. The trade deficit is only about 60 or 70 billion dollars, out of which India has already assured that half of it can be consumed by our buying more arms and ammunition from
Right.
US. As regards the other half, that shock can be consumed
Right.
by our domestic market. You remember 2008 and 9 when Lehman Brothers Bank fell, and there
Right.
was an acute
Right.
crisis. India was the least affected because of its domestic market.
Yes.
So we can consume that. We can cushion. We have that
Right.
cushion.
Right.
So I
As
don't
of
think
now,
that
sir, India is watching the meeting very, very closely, and especially what happens on Monday is crucial. We welcome what has happened, but important to also watch what the terms of the peace deal will be, because Donald Trump has said no ceasefire. We are trying to broker a peace deal. I want to thank all of you gentlemen for joining us this evening on all the latest developments, and of course keeping our viewers ahead on what happens next. And while this meeting did not yield any significant breakthroughs, what has drawn attention are Putin's unusual facial expressions, a mix of bewildered and confused looks, quizzical stares and tightened brows in response to questions which he ultimately did not answer. Putin did not respond to reporters' questions about the war in Ukraine and made confused expressions as multiple journalists began shouting those questions. Take a look at what had happened.